we'll be starting. So David?
Thank you, Steve. And thanks, Robert, for the beautiful music you always provide. This is Shirley's hour, but she did invite me to introduce her. So as she's been preparing for what she might share with us all, I've been preparing to consider how I might introduce Shirley. First of all, I want to welcome you, Phil, onto the call here with us today. Phil in Chicago, it's his first time with us. He came across some writings, I think it was, Phil, by Marcia Bogelin a number of months ago. Connected with Marcia, brief communication with me, and then after the last Temple of Light service that we had, Phil dropped me a note and said he'd love to be on with us this morning. So it's delightful to welcome you into this company of elders, Phil. And I think that's truly what we can call ourselves, not just because of our age, but because of the accumulated wisdom that has gathered over the years of our paying attention to the things of the spirit, which when they become embodied and lived, create in us who were once children an elder at some point in our life. Minds clear, hearts open, spirit vibrant, and ready to bring something living and transcendent into the world of crazy, mixed up man. Maybe we at one time felt that we were a part of that assembly of crazy, mixed up man, but something occurred to lift us out of that and bring us through the cycles of growth and development where we might truly say in this day that I am an elder in the house of the Lord on earth. I think this is a good way really to introduce Shirley because she truly is an elder. I first met the Malin family 50 years ago in April now, 50 years ago right now, when I went out to Riverbend Orchard, an organic communal farm in Kamloops that was associated with the Central Emissary community, Emissaries of Divine Light at 100 Mile House. And they owned a communal organic farm in Kamloops, BC called Riverbend Orchard. And I went out there to buy goat milk for my young daughter. And when I was there, I met Shirley's husband along with some others. And it took me a year later to go back. And at that time, I met Shirley directly. So Shirley and I have met face to face 49 years ago. 7 times 7. Seems auspicious that this is your day and hour to be with us, Shirley. Over the months where we shared Temple of Light services and in other service settings where we've gathered, there has been an emphasis on, in a very subtle way, on the emergence of a new quality of man and a new quality of woman on earth. The emergence of divine men and divine women, incarnate in the flesh, in expression, taking responsibility spiritually, in radiant action, radiant thinking, radiant feeling here on earth. An emphasis on the fact that this is occurring in our midst and we can see it unfolding through the lives of others all around the world in this day. a new quality and a new emergence of man and woman. Divine man, we could say, maybe just say real man, true man, upright man, honorable woman, true woman, radiant woman. And I find that this is really emphasized today as well as I introduce Shirley. One aspect of divine woman is divine mother, whether she has given birth to physical children or not in her embodiment on earth, but this sense of mothering something that is to emerge new and fresh through all men and all women who would let that happen. And through men, whether they're physical fathers or not, a sense of fathering the new emergence of sons and daughters, men and women, and caring for and loving what is seen as the emergence of divine woman and divine mother. In a very particular way, we as men and women coming forth in new ways have a responsibility as sons and daughters of God to represent the spirit of Mother God and represent the spirit of Father God. One might say to represent the spirit of grandmother and grandfather, which could be seen as represented in the radiance of the sun and the focus of divine being that we sense is present and is the source of that great radiance that bathes this whole solar system, of which the earth is a part. And so we were born to be here on earth in this time, to be called into remembering the fact that we are sons and daughters of God, that we're not part of the body of what has been called, scripturally speaking, the son of perdition, corruption, destruction, defilement, but the son of love and truth, bringing life in new ways to this planet, which has been over many ages defiled, and we could say, speaking directly, raped by those who did not know what they were doing. We begin to know what we're doing as sons and daughters of God, representing the Father of love and the Mother of truth, and bringing a focus of the Spirit of life through our elder presence as men and women. And it's a particular joy to just acknowledge this relative to our friend Shirley, who really, I would say, since the very beginning, when she first started to wake up, knew that she was here to be divine woman on earth, and to let that develop and grow into the presence of a true elder at whatever age that might emerge. None of us, I think, here on this line are expert speakers. We don't look upon ourselves as, professional in that sense. Although as we develop our elder substance, something quite professional comes through us, in spite of the fact that we weren't really trained to be speakers, but we have something to say. We've called it the word of spirit expressed in the moment in a living manner, the rhythms of the spirit. But we're here together as friends, taking our turn, each one of us, speaking what we have to speak from our position of an elder. We could say in the body of the newly emerging Israel, which really could translate the newly emerging action of the Spirit of God coming through men and women on earth. Israel, the action of God through men and women on earth. And the elders have been gathered to this extent on this phone call, and in the world it's happening. And out of that developing body of eldership comes a point of focus for the expression of spirit that provides a fresh, new exemplification of the government of God. And so, Shirley, maybe I have introduced you in a way that might seem, well, that's a large commission to take on in the few minutes that I have. But I know you've lived your life in this way, and to this hour, you and we have been brought together. And it's pure joy to welcome you as a friend, an elder, a divine woman, and a precious colleague. And good to work together this morning with you having your few words to share with us now. Over to you.
Thank you, David. My heart is filled to the brim. Indeed, I'm not here to deliver some grand presentation telling everybody how to go about their lives, but simply to bring something of the substance of my own living. And it is pretty amazing to think that we have come this far and not necessarily been very much consciously connected with each other's lives. But as with most of us in this call, we have been in this work together. And interestingly, it's Easter Day. And in the Christian world, they talk about Jesus coming forth from the tomb. But there is the assumption that he died and now he's come back to life. Well, I think we have a sensing that that is a misunderstanding of the truth of what he came to deliver to us, because he never died. He always remained this connected being to the earth, the earthly form. And so he was able to walk out of that tomb. And I believe this is what we're feeling in this day. We are coming to this rebirth, some people might call it, or coming forth from the tomb. And I'm sure that there are a number of us on the line who are parents and know something about this birthing process, which can be quite uncomfortable in the state that we know now. Often lots of pain, and there's often a reaching out to get rid of the pain, so we'll do something else. So we take a medication, or we have someone take the baby out of our womb. But it's all part of the disaster that's perpetuated that we've known for so long. And we're here now to let the new birth occur because of the, what I would call the purity of heart. And that has been very much my emphasis since I was a little kid. I didn't have much of a comprehension of this, but I really related to this service of Martin's about, he called it Woman, given in August of 1970. And that was just the year before I met him, before I became aware of what was happening on Earth. And when I was a child, I look back now and I recall having chosen the two parents that I picked to be my parents, to steward me through the youthful age so that there would be enough discipline to experience the truth of love, not just the love that I knew and felt and really wanted to express, but it needed to be under the design and the control of the one who sent me here. And my parents were a beautiful, nurturing, loving couple to provide that beautiful sense of truth, because it wasn't based on the concepts of how one should behave so much or what you should believe in, but there was the loving discipline. And in those days, it was okay to spank a child. And I had my share of that, but it was always done in love and precisely when it was needed. And I've looked back and been so grateful, because as a woman, I've never had any trouble attracting men. So this whole thing that is discussed about what women do to create conditions to please themselves wasn't necessarily a big draw for me. It was more about allowing those essences that were attractive to be properly disciplined and stewarded for a greater purpose. I may not have known what that purpose was until I met Martin. Then it began to make sense. But my father had instilled in me this careful, precise stewarding of these essences, because he knew what it was that I needed to work with. And my mother, being in agreement, made the whole thing make sense. Well, in this service, I thought maybe I'd read the service, but I really feel like I need to use a lot of my own words. But from this service called Woman, Martin's saying, true government emerges on earth as woman clothed with the sun, spoken of in the book of Revelation. Through her is brought forth the man-child who rules the nations with a rod of iron, the rod of iron representing the absoluteness of divine government. And this is what my father represented to me in the earthly sense. Because if I was needing a spanking, even though he'd just come home from work and he was so glad to see his family and wanted to extend his loving arms, if mom had reported that I'd been cheeky and disrespectful and I needed a spanking, he was willing to do it. And to me, that is so precious. Well, as we move along here, something else he said, because this is beautiful to me to think of the woman with the, she's clothed with the sun. And that's what I see as what we call radiance. There is this radiant, loving ability to be connected with God, the Creator, the one I came to serve, and to let that shine forth through me as an invitation and a substance of living that enfolds everybody in my world. Well, these power structures that man has created, they represent the other woman in the Bible called the great whore, or Babylon. So to the degree that any of us have been striving for these things that would be pleasing, like marriage, and a nice house and being raised in good company. And, you know, this was my lifestyle. I was raised with in the top 5% of the money earning people in the world up in Canada, in Montreal, actually. And we had lots of standards to live by. But there was a calling to me that went beyond that. And I didn't understand it, but I knew I needed to honor it, whatever it was. And interesting enough, my father had he'd come to the point of being what you might call agnostic or atheist, but his best friend had been killed by a propeller in an airplane out on the tarmac. And that was so devastating to him. He thought, well, God, if there's a God, he couldn't allow that. So he just sort of dismissed all this stuff. But he honored my mother's requisition to continue in the church and to raise the children with this background. And then at the kind of church we went to was the United Church of Canada. And you got your children's training at age 13 when you could become a church member that was registered. So we had to go through all that. And then at that point, my parents turned us loose, me and my sister actually. And the decision was up to us, which I thought also was a very honorable thing. There wasn't this control pattern, it just got to be a certain way. So I went off to university, and there was a longing in me, but I didn't know what it was about. And I remember I had this young man at the university who was quite enthralled with me and wanted to marry me. And of course, I had been so well trained. I had to have things in proper order. I was a virgin, you don't participate in this before marriage and all this stuff. And he was a devout Baptist. And so he had this passion for his religion. And I just remember feeling, oh my, I long to have that kind of passion, but it won't be for his religion. And I couldn't find what it was. But anyway, my father helped me through that one. This guy lived 1,000 miles away from us up in we were in northern Quebec, and he lived down there in New Brunswick. And so I was home on vacation from college one time, and this guy drove 1,000 miles to come up and see me, and he gave me a call, wanted me to come and meet him at the hotel. So I turned the phone over to my dad, and I said, this guy wants to meet me. And you told me I wasn't to see him again for 5 years, give it time, So he said, all right, let me take care of it. And he went over to the hotel to meet the guy, and he was with him for about an hour. And then he came back and he said, I've told him he can come and say hello and goodbye, and that's it. So that's what he did, came hello and goodbye, and away he went. And you'd think, oh my God, I mean, how many girls that I knew my age, it would have been absolutely devastated by this and rebellious. But I trusted my father. And this to me is that beautiful trust that I have learned to trust to my heavenly Father, not just my earthly father. And this is something that just relates to my love for what we're about here. The group of us that come together in this, I find us sharing this passion, or I couldn't speak like this. It's something we're doing together. It's an essence that's moving through us. And I feel very responsible for it in the womanly sense because of where I came from, what I came to do, the job I know I came to do. And I had to spend many years alone doing this job. Yes, indeed, I was married, like David said. But that marriage was temporary. It was a part of the larger design, and it was necessary. But it wasn't my reason for being. It wasn't striving to have a certain classification or security in life. It was to fulfill the process that was required at that level of things in my life. So after we parted, to me, it was so important to keep that purity of heart and love and respect for the one who had come to be with me for a certain cycle in this development. And then it was time to move on. And my my beautiful children, I wanted to protect them from a difficult upbringing because their father really did have anger problems and was very emotionally disruptive in the household. But my honor was to my father, my heavenly father. And after I met Martin, he was the one who held that point for me. And I made all my decisions of any import based on his input. And when it came time to separate, dissolve the marriage, I consulted him. And indeed, it was appropriate at that time. So any of these major decisions for me have been coming from down above to be expressed through this form with the purity of heart that I've known and honor. And to me, it's so important as a woman to provide this for the male aspect, because man was created male and female to represent God on earth. So we are a unit of male and female. And woman, according to the story, was taken from the rib of man. And if we recognize the physiology of the body, that rib is a protective mechanism for the heart and the lungs. And the lungs, to me, would represent spirit. As one breathes in the spirit and exhales one's own expression of that spirit. And the heart, of course, is the caring, loving purity that we are here to sustain. And to me, the female was taken of his Adam's rib to protect him, to love him, and to bring forth his seed in the earth. And his seed isn't just physical babies. We seem to have lost connection with the true spiritual substance, and we've all turned into this physical love and lust for things and one another and babies and all kinds of failures. But to me, it's time for us as women to honor the true creation, not to follow out Babylon, the whore, anymore. And I have a picture that I've asked David to put up for me that just speaks to me so beautifully. It's like a video, it's an active vision that represents what I'm talking about with the relationship between male and female. So David, if you've got access to that, could you flash that for me? Here it is. And if you watch, if you can let it work, David, it actually moves. There we go. Does anybody else feel this dynamic that just touches me all the way through? And I'm sorry those on the phone can't see it. But this is the dynamic of the heavenly male bringing his substance into the earth and received by the female. And she's wearing some greenery, which would represent the earth, and the golden crown upon her head. And it's constantly in motion. It's not a static thing. And to me, that speaks so much to the love that the male and female can experience together. But it requires being in contact with God through the heart. And it's got to be the pure heart. And man has shut God out of the earth. He's gone about all his own business to create his own world. And in so doing, we have lost the purity and the function that we were meant to provide. And I feel like somehow we're all sensing this, and we're coming together in this temple. And I trust David with my heart to bring forth into this temple, because he has welcomed all of you because of what you have brought to him too. There's just something that can't be put in words. Well, as Martin said, there may be all kinds of things that are wrong, unjust, unfair, but all such distorted patterns would very easily evaporate if one didn't support them. I mean, all the things that are going on in the earth now, how do you suppose they have any energy to continue? Where does that force come from? It all comes from the Creator, whether it's for disintegration or integration. It's all from the same source. So what is disrupting it? What's creating the mess? It's the impure heart. It's like a transistor radio seeking to receive the transmission from the Lord, and then there's so much static in it, what comes out is indiscernible. And we have robbed all this beautiful energy that has been provided for us to fill the earth, to replenish the earth, to bless the earth. And we have distorted it because of self-centeredness. And what happened to Eve after she and Adam were in the garden, and the Lord came walking in the garden in the evening, and they were hiding behind trees? Why was that? Because Eve had failed in her commission. She had become embroiled in her feeling realm and decided that she knew what she needed to really fulfill this beautiful feeling she had. And what happened to Adam? He loved her so much. He felt like he couldn't abandon her. So he fell with her. He joined her in it. And when the Lord comes walking in the garden, they're ashamed. They're fearful. So when we see it from this viewpoint, what is it that's our responsibility now? To come out of the fearful and shameful state. And I remember Martin used to refer to the ABCs. How many of you would remember what the ABCs stand for? They are a result of fear. And judgment. Then we have A, accusation, B, blame, C, criticism. And don't we find ourselves doing this to one another? We may not mean to do it, but something in us reacts to something someone may have said, or maybe a different opinion they had. Well, that doesn't make sense. We're so busy living out of this mental capacity in the self-centered state. The mental capacity was designed to permeate the whole form and bring forth the wisdom of the creative process. But how we've distorted it so. And now the call is on Easter Day of all times, wake up and come forth into my garden. Follow me. And some of the things that I think of as a man builds a house, but a woman creates the home. Do we notice that when we walk into somebody's home? Is it just a house with all the beautiful decor? Or is it truly a home where there is this love and agreement and this substance between male and female? It doesn't matter. We don't have to see everything in the same conceptual light, as long as we know it in the spiritual purity of heart, and we can release the reactionary parts of our experience if we love the Lord thy God first. And I remember meeting a young couple when we were in our travels. We have this RV and we love to go down to the south, and when it's cold in Colorado, we go down to Arizona and New Mexico and enjoy the warmth. And we were at a hot springs with a young couple one time. We'd never seen them before. But here they were, they'd just been married for a year, and their hearts were so open to what it is I had to offer that I couldn't stop talking about what we're talking about now. And they loved it. And I brought to their attention the fact of the triangle we've spoken about with the Lord at the apex, man and woman at each of the base of that triangle, and to the point that the male and female orientation, their polarity, is to the apex, the Lord God. Then they find themselves functioning together in agreement in a most beautiful way. Even, like I say, if we don't have the same viewpoint on things, this point is what brings us together. And we begin to make the substance that fills out this triangle. And it's an invitation for others to come to. And when I explained this to this young couple, just married 1 year, they both said, wow, that makes so much sense. They did have a religious background, but you know, in this day and age, we have what we call spiritual, but not religious. It's a whole subset of the younger generation. Spiritual, but not religious. And that makes a lot of sense to me, because we're coming out of the confines, the limitations of religion. Let's let it be spirit, knowing, because we're generating this substance. And I'll tell you, I know I have a very beautiful young man. I call him young because I'm the mother, so that puts me in the elder position. But here he is with such an awareness that I have seen his ability, and a lot of you have heard from him. His name is Aaron, and he's online right now with his beautiful wife and the daughter. She's probably running around, 4 years old, creating a stir. But nevertheless, this young man has been a point of connection for me with this male-female thing. And if you can see that picture in your head again, you'll see that it's not a physical, sexual thing. It's something so much more magnificent, with all the essences of heaven blending with the essences of the negative aspect, the woman aspect. Womb. Lots comes to us, but it doesn't come only at the physical level. It has to come permeating through the spiritual first. And this young man has been with me since the day he was born, since the day he was conceived, shall we say, and provided something of the maleness, even though he was my child. You know, I never had to correct him. As a child, he did the right thing because that's who he was. Can you imagine? I had been through spankings and so on myself. I never had to spank this young man. And that's another reason that I felt like I had to protect him, because as big a heart as his dad had, he was tough and angry. And it was very challenging for this young man, this young boy, to deal with his stuff. And I don't say anything disparaging about this man. I hope you understand. I have a great love for him and the part that he played in bringing forth what we are experiencing together now. And even after we had parted, we remained good friends. And he had this amazing family in the Mennonite clan in Kansas. And we would go to Thanksgiving gatherings with this clan of Mennonites every year, year after year, even though we weren't married anymore. And the clan was most welcoming because of the quality of relationship we had. Oh, I would take him to Canada, to my family up there for a Christmas celebration. It was a part of honoring the truth of love, not the human distorted stuff. And so who should come into my life? And I'm here introducing this most wonderful man that you have seen online with me before. But you want to talk about the truth of love. Here's another man entering into my life. And if he weren't so shy and humble, he might explain some of the things. But he even came with me and my ex to these family gatherings. Now imagine in the traditional human state. Can you imagine a guy going along with that? He had to break out of his own thinking about these things and take that bold step to trust my heart, to trust the female. She would not manipulate. She would not betray. Isn't that what we're about? And I'm so thankful to have all these other women together with me in this, and me with them. There is something new being born on earth, and we are bearing this new child. And you know, there are pressures in the state of the world the way it is now. Childbirth can be very uncomfortable. So as a world body, we're going to feel this discomfort, but that pressure is the power of God. And as we're aligned with that, can you see the changes that can come? No judgments. We don't pick out who's bad, who's good. This is evil. It's all evolve. We've called it EVOL, that which is evolving in the creative process. So there's nothing wrong with it. It looks miserable according to our eyes of judgment and discomfort, and reaction. But when we can find that still, quiet place, there's nothing wrong with it. We can steward the power, the love, the glory of it all, and have our eyes wide open. Okay, that's happening. That's okay. We let it go. It's like we have to have a bowel movement every day. We have to let things go. We bring in that beautiful, purifying substance of spirit, and we let the spirit create the seed that's to come forth. So here we are together. I see all of us in that still place, without judgment, with love. And I'm so honored to be a part of this. And I'm so thankful that David could trust me to do this, because he had no idea what I was going to say. And I didn't either, except that I've been working towards this for many years. So please, let's be together, love together, and honor our King in great glory and thanksgiving. And I know there have been some wonderful women who have just supported me in this, worked with me in this, to come together for this beautiful moment. And I would just let go to whatever may be moving in the rest of you, trusting in this creative process together.
Shirley, I'm so touched by what you've just offered. And it's almost a prayer and a longing of the heart that came through, that we not only abide in this place, but we continue without ceasing. No manipulation, no betrayal, no accusation, blame, or judgment. That seems like a tall order to the human ego. But for us in spirit, it's our joy. It's our gift to the world. And I love standing with you in this moment of pure joy and love. Thank you.
Thank you, dear one. I know your heart too. And I did want to add something about my beautiful son having received a wonderful woman into his life after many years of patience, seeking to come out of the constraints that have been put upon him by the earthly affairs. And one day it happened, as he told some of you who may have heard, that he spotted this one woman. He said, I know she will be my wife. After being many years sort of giving up the idea of ever being married. And I have come to love this woman so dearly, because she loves what we are about, not just Aaron, but Aaron and Mom, and the larger picture that we are bringing to focus. And you know, if I may, I would like to just add a little something that I wrote back in April of 2004. And I was attending, I told you about my continuing relationship with my former husband and his family in Kansas. Well, his mother, she became my ex-mother-in-law, was still so much a part of my life and my heart. I had so much respect and love for this woman. She was a big part of this ongoing relationship I had with her son. And it just so happens, I wrote this thing back in 2004, and I'll give you a little idea. I called it agreement between women. Spiritual agreement among women. Isn't it a beautiful thing? Last February, I witnessed and participated in the living experience of such natural female function in a most unlikely circumstance. At 94 years of age, my former mother-in-law, Helen Malin, suffered a heart attack. She was hospitalized and recovering well when I decided to travel to Kansas from Colorado to offer my professional nursing services in order to expedite her return to her own home as quickly as possible. Well, at the same time, all of her children and their spouses were gathering around to provide whatever assistance might be needed. All of her children, she had, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 boys and 1 girl. As fate would have it, she died within 4 days of my arrival in Kansas, but her glorious spirit generously imbued the whole circumstance surrounding her process of departure. Helen was a wonderful human being who had been living a full and creative life with graceful independence in a small Midwestern town. Just days before her illness, she had been driving herself to the supermarket to shop for food, visiting family and friends, attending the local Mennonite church, and preparing dinner for whomsoever may come calling. 94. Well, Helen had borne 5 children with her husband, who was a Lutheran minister, who had died 33 years earlier. She had never remarried, but was very well encompassed by her 4 sons and 1 daughter. Her eldest son was the first of her offspring to marry, and to this day remains wedded to the same wonderful woman, Jackie. Well, the rest of her children have each experienced divorce at least once, including my former husband. Well, in the words of her other precious daughter-in-law, Nancy, Helen was, these are her words now, Nancy, Helen was treasured for her incredible ability to truly listen to with her heart, to give sage advice if asked, and not notice whether her suggestions were followed. End of Nancy's quote. Well, her attitude was always one of inclusiveness. She refrained from judgment and was open to newness and adventure. Indeed, Helen set the tone for this wonderful, creative experience of true womanhood, to be known amongst the 3 daughters-in-law and me being the ex. Well, during this time together, Nancy, Jackie, and I easily assumed our various roles in support of the family structure and dynamics. We functioned flawlessly together, like tributaries, merging into one river of love. We shared household duties, nursing shifts, clerical tasks, and provided welcome to visitors and emotional support to family and friends. Another former wife was equally warmly embraced into the celebration of Helen's life. To quote a sibling's classic family humor about the configuration of women, quote, "There is something quite functional about this dysfunctional family," unquote. A mutual love and respect for the uniqueness of each woman's contribution to the whole allowed for a truly uplifting spirit of thanksgiving. At a time of loss and morning, we sensed a spiritual victory for women everywhere. One that proclaims the intelligence, the beauty, and the grace of womanhood in action on earth. Now, oddly enough, I had this somewhere buried deep in my files and came upon it as I was preparing to think what it is that I really wanted to bring to focus here. So I just am, again, so thankful for all the women who have come together to do this. We're in the Lord's temple, preparing the food, ministering unto those who would come calling. Isn't this beautiful? So again, I'll turn it over to anybody who wants to add something before I get too excited again.
Shirley, I've loved your radiant expression in this hour. Your description of a life well lived in the control patterns required of the time and the control pattern of the Lord and the love for the Lord. Last week, I became aware of the name Sophia. As I looked up Sophia, some of you know, I never heard in 66 years of my living of Sophia, who's the feminine, well, feminine is the term for it, but what I'm going to call the buried shame pattern that has been missing from the Lord's action on earth. And this is my interpretation and the little knowing that I'm working with. So to see somebody who has lived in radiance fully in her life is a joy to behold. And the small video you showed us describes what I'm sensing. And I told someone this morning that the largeness of what I'm sensing that is being restored, I don't have words for it yet. So we're dealing, we as women, with that which has been truly under wraps. So it's wonderful to see this coming forth now and through someone so lovely as you. Thank you.
Thank you, my dear. The woman's heart to heart.
Shirley, your words are just precious. And as you probably no doubt have gathered, have brought tears to my eyes, tears of utter joy, that we can live in the day when the evidence of true womanhood, of true response can return to our King. So much more I could say. The tears will not allow it. But I don't know why, but I remember a time when I first touched emissaries of divine light at a swimming pool at Four Ways in Johannesburg at like 10 in the evening. I had just touched this ministry of ours, and a man said to me, "You will meet the best of the best in the world." And lo and behold, how true that is. You are one of the shining lights, and what a joy to be together with not only you, but with all the other elders that shine together in the earth in this day. I delight to you with every ounce of my being. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Millie. And I must say, I have thoroughly enjoyed reading comments that you've made on the Fate Cosmic blog story. Your beautiful heart, your clarity of thinking, it's gorgeous. Thank you. Well, perhaps we've done it. There's something
May I
very,
say something?
yes, yes.
Thank you, Shirley, and thank you all. Um, I, like all women, have rejoiced in your bringing forth today. And I would like just to read a little from Proverbs. We all know this verse or part of it. Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far beyond rubies. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil when he sits with the elders. The responsibility of woman on this earth is so beautifully brought forth by you, Shirley. We've been friends for a long time and served in high places. And we all know a husband. We all know a household. The husband may not be in our lives physically at the moment, but we all know the husbandry of bearing this true spirit of the risen Christ today, the living Christ. Someone who dies does not come alive again. He lived because of his connection with his Father. It is a undulating, pleasurable thing to be with you and with all of us in this hour, in this time together. Happy Easter, and thank you.
Thank you. Again, I say my heart is filled to overflowing. I don't ask for anything. I just give my all and love you all and thank you for participating in this precious time together. Praise God. I'll turn it over to Steve.
Shirley, I'd like to just say a word before we give it to Steve. I'm reminded this morning, because of the spirit that we're sharing here, that the word that was used in the New Testament and is called the Christ is exactly the same as that word that was used in the Old Testament at the time of the children of Israel, at the time of Moses. Shekinah. Said to be the evidence of the presence of the one who dwells in the center of all things. And the fire that emanates from that center, the fire of love, the spirit of the Father as it relates to this earth, and the light that glows from the spirit of the Mother, and the light that extends in radiance through this holy earth, the body of the Mother. And the cloud of glory that extends from the center of things in this solar system all the way out through the whole planetary body. In a way, we as sons and daughters of God on earth are that living cloud of glory extending from where I am, where you are, as a halo of radiance today, this morning. Altogether, we've allowed an experience of this, largely because of the spirit of your sharing with us. Stories, we've all got stories, but you told your story within the radiance of this cloud of glory. And so the essences of it had particular meaning now. And we each have a story where that quality of radiant meaning can be articulated as well. And you've opened a door here to something of the spirit of woman and the spirit of Divine Mother. And also, I would say, to the spirit of man, Divine Man, to come forth more fully in the days, weeks, months ahead as we share more and differently in the Temple of Light. In 1996, I wrote a poem just a few months before I met Anne. I'm going to read a few lines of it to you, to all of us. Listen, the eternal heartbeat. Look, a wondrous woman appearing, clothed with the radiance of the sun, with the full moon in her belly and 12 nations gathered round, bearing gifts from the past and promises for the future. Does she approach from without, or does she approach from within? We journey long and long together, secret sharing, caring, healing, nourishing, breathing blessing on a fire well tended, knowing naked pleasure in this rising springtime season, where the sun stands still inside me now. Wonder finds rest inside me now. We journey long and long together, knowing the space within and the space without. Planetary beings in spiral dance within the living body of the sacred sun. So as I say, you've opened a window or a door here, and we all know you better than we ever did before. And I think we know others who are on the line with us, who didn't speak today, more too because of the intimacy, the intimate space that we shared with you this morning. So we'll continue to come forth together in one another's presence and in the presence of the grandfathers and the grandmothers in the sacred sun, which encompasses us all. Thank you so much, Shirley.
Thank you,
It's been a
David.
precious, precious time.
Thank you. Mm.
Steve.
Let's close our time with a devotion. O Lord and King, on this day, we acknowledge divine manhood and divine womanhood, that there may be a blending with pure hearts in this day, in this time, in our hearts, in this world. And our heart is, as our heart is pure, we know the truth, we're governed by the truth. We allow our feelings to blend with the truth, that thy light may shine in our hearts and out through our expression. one expression, thy Christ expression. And as we're unified in this way, we know our place, our one place individually, together as a whole. For here is our reason for being. Letting thy love radiate. In the living word of thy name, we abide and hold dear our sacred birthright, all for thy glory in this day. In thy name, amen. Let's continue in this way, holding sacred what we've shared. And we'll look forward to our time in May, and Robert and myself will lead that time. Robert, do you have some music for us?